Welcome to BizFilings Expert Insights. When your business needs expert advice on compliance issues, you can count on us. We provide tips, tools, and strategies to help you at every stage of your business's life cycle.
Hi, I'm Greg Corombos. Our guest this week is Tim Jensen, Service Operations Consultant for BizFilings. In recent weeks, we've been talking about business structure and formal business entity. Today, we'll be talking about the right state to incorporate in. And Tim, thanks very much for being with us.
Happy to be with you today, Greg. Thanks for having me.
So once a small business owner has actually decided to incorporate their business, which we, of course, highly encourage, the next step is to choose a state of incorporation. A lot of different factors can go into that, so what factors need to be considered when making this decision?
Yes, Greg. This is actually a very important step, and alongside with choosing the entity type when you decide to incorporate, the next most important decision really is which state it is you're going to incorporate into. There are several factors that you can consider when you're doing this step. The first one is, do you want to incorporate into your home state where your business is, or do you want to go into one of the business-friendly states such as Nevada or Delaware and try to take advantage of some of the benefits that those states offer? Another thing that you have to consider is actually where you are transacting your business. You're going to have to register in any of the states where you're actually transacting business in. Another area that you want to at least pay some attention to, especially if you have options as far as where your business is and which states you're going to incorporate into, is what are the fees actually to incorporate into each of those states. Most states vary on the types of fees that they have based on the entity type and whether you're registered there as a domestic entity, which would be your home state, or if you're going to register as a foreign entity, which would be a state that you're going to transact business into after you've already gotten your authorization in your domestic state. Another factor that you certainly want to take into account is any of the ongoing fees and formalities that each of these states have in order to keep your business in good standing with the state. Many states have different requirements that they require a business to handle each and every year. And based upon the needs of your business, you'll want to make sure you know all of these before you make that final decision. And then lastly, you want to take a look at whatever the state tax implications are. Again, these vary widely across each of the states, and you want to make sure that you would do some research ahead of time to know how the particular laws in that state may impact your business. So really the best thing to do is kind of take a look at all of these factors and then compare them against what your business needs are at this time as for your small business, and then make the best decision you can from there.
Let's go back to the step before this, and that's establishing the formal entity. What factor does the entity type play in making your decision on what state to incorporate in?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. These two actually go hand in hand. You should actually make this decision together. So when you're looking at the different entity types that are available to you, as you're looking at those and determining which one might be best for you, at the same time, you should be looking at the states that you're interested in and see how each of these states handle that entity type. So, for example, I mentioned earlier about state tax implications. What you would want to do is, if you decide to form as an LLC, take a look at that, what state has as far as its requirements go from a tax standpoint for an LLC or a corporation, and that'll help you to guide your decision. There's also the factor of the ongoing formalities that state may have based on that particular entity type as well. So again, those are just some things you want to factor in. And then if you get into a situation in the state of New York where they actually have very specific requirements for LLCs that need to be handled at the time of your registration, and one of these requirements is a publication that has to be done that can get very expensive, that's just something you want to consider before you make that final decision.
You've mentioned the phrase business-friendly states a couple of times. Now you've even mentioned examples of Delaware and Nevada. So define that term a little more and discuss what the advantages and perhaps disadvantages are of setting up shop in those quote-unquote business-friendly states.
Yeah, and this is something that small business owners really need to be careful of. There are certainly great benefits to be had when you form in Delaware or Nevada. Delaware is the corporate capital of the world. And the advantages that they have for businesses and corporations that form there are varied. The important thing to know, if you're considering to form in either Delaware or Nevada, is one, knowing what those advantages are, and two, can your business actually take advantage of them? So, for example, a lot of the business-friendly laws in Delaware are really designed for large corporations. And the tax laws and the way the courts are set up and all those kind of things are designed around that. That may be good for Ford Motor Company, but is that good for your business? It may not be. And so what you really need to figure out here is, can my business take advantage of the benefits that are being offered? And if it can, is it worth the cost that I have to go through in order to take advantage of them? So, for example, I mentioned earlier that when you decide which state to form in, you need to be formed in a state that you're transacting business in. Many companies form in Delaware and never transact business there at all. What this requires them to do is then form in their domestic or in their state they're doing business in as a foreign entity. So now, as a small business, not only are you taking care of the requirements in the state of Delaware, but now you're also taking care of them in your foreign state where you're actually doing your business. And this can get complicated for a small business owner who really needs to focus their time and attention on growing their business. So the best advice I can give in these situations is certainly take a look at it. There are some specific things that if you need, such as anonymity and things like that, and if those are your most important factors, then I would say look strongly at a situation like Delaware or Nevada. However, if you take a look at this and determine that the requirements to be in more than one state are just too much for you at this time in your business, then I would suggest that you stay in the actual state that you're transacting business in.
Tim, we've talked about where to incorporate officially, what state to incorporate in, and what factors might work well and might work against you on a particular state. But if you do business in multiple states, do you need to then register in every state that you have clients? What's the proper process on that?
Yeah, Greg, this is a great question, and one that we get from customers all the time. And this can be one of the most confusing areas that a business owner has to really determine. What constitutes transacting business? Even the states can't necessarily agree on this, and in many cases, the states have varied laws and regulations as far as what constitutes to transact business. So from a small business owner's perspective, it can be really difficult and challenging to determine what that might be. However, there are a few things that you can kind of look to see if I'm actually transacting business in a state. In most states, if you are servicing customers directly in that state, they're going to consider you doing business there. If you have employees in that state, they're going to be considering you to be doing business there. If you have a bank account in that state, again, they're going to be considering that you're doing business there. So if you have any of those situations, you're almost certainly going to have to register that domestic entity into those foreign states just to protect yourself and get authorization by those states to do business in their states, just like you did in your domestic state. One question that comes up often is, I'm an online business or I do consulting, so I don't really bring my products and services into those states, but I do business all over the country. Does that mean that I have to register in all the states that I'm working with customers in? And right now, it's kind of a gray area, but for the most part, if you're doing consultant work or you're doing online work and things like that, those have been exempt from that transacting business requirement. So at this point in time, if that's your business, you could form in a state like Delaware and do business across the country because your customers are kind of scattered around and you're not directly providing service to them as you would be like in a brick and mortar location. So from that perspective, the states have been kind of lenient in that regard as far as the need to register there. But for the most part, if you can, the 4 or 5 things I mentioned earlier regarding employees or bank accounts or customers that you're physically servicing in that state, you're going to want to make sure you go ahead and register in that state. And it's important because if you don't take those steps now, you can face penalties and taxes when you eventually do go and register into that state, because essentially what the state's going to ask you to do is to pay all of the back taxes and fees that you may have owed them for the time that you have been doing business and had not been registered there yet.
Tim, not only great advice, but my personal favorite, well-articulated advice. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today, Greg. I enjoyed it.
Tim Jensen, Service Operations Consultant at BizFilings. I'm Greg Corumbus, and for more information on this topic, please call BizFilings at 844-202-0707.
BizFilings, a Wolters Kluwer company, has been incorporating businesses since 1996.